one thing I tell everyone at the end. Oh, and you can have sex on a stuffed unicorn.
I mean, that's the best part, probably.
Mm-hmm. That's how you guys keep the love alive in your marriage.
It's a secret to marriage. If you want a happy marriage, it's not communication. It's not even constant sex. It's just like have sex on a unicorn once.
I want that to be the open right before the music.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Tudor. I hardly know her. Hi, guys.
Hey,
everybody.
Speaking of sex on a unicorns, let's talk about Henry.
I thought you were going to say something about Jeff. Like, Jeff is sex on a unicorn personified.
Well, that's true. Hello to all my
No, I am the unicorn.
Hello to all my family members who listen.
Yeah.
I get some weird texts. I'm going to text my entire family. Please don't listen to the latest episode.
Now they have to.
Anyway.
How are you doing, Garrett?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
We're doing well. We missed you last week.
I know. I'm sorry I couldn't make it.
It's okay. We knew you were
last
hungover
week was,
from celebrating.
Was my birthday week.
Yeah, we knew you were just hungover from celebrating, turning.
I didn't drink at all for my birthday.
Yeah.
The only reason I drank last week was because it was such a stressful fucking week that I needed something to
I'm
unwind.
sure.
Like, hey, it's my birthday. That's cool. Oh, also your car is gonna break down. Also, it's gonna be the busiest day you've ever had at work.
Yeah, I've just kind of reached the point where.
Also, you're gonna be broke throughout the rest of the month. Is that okay?
Life is good.
Yay.
Yeah.
This is, I feel like there's like this subtle undercurrent to our podcast. Like we do have the podcast, we do have the Tudor talk and all that fun stuff. But then there's this subtle undercurrent of like coming of age, like in up to their 30s, like all of the nitty gritty crap you have to deal with.
This isn't a podcast so much as it is therapy.
You know, I really find this therapeutic sometimes.
And it can be.
Like just hanging out with you guys.
We're not even going to talk about the Tudors this week. We're just going to talk about life.
Well, it's just like hanging out with you guys and researching something I love that like, it would be amazing to have a career out of doing this. Like I'd totally be down for being a historian.
Mm-hmm.
If I could go back to college, I would do a historian track in my career. So it's this good balance. It provides me the balance in my life that I need when everything else is shit.
Oh.
Aw. Stop it.
Stop it. Love you guys.
Oh.
So what are you going to teach us about, Garrett?
Well, I'm going to teach you
Fuel
about
pumps.
how,
Fuel pumps break.
I don't know. Once upon a time, there was a man. He I think he had to do community service. I don't remember. His name was Bombay, and he had to, much to his chagrin, he had to teach a bunch of kids how to play hockey. And they were a rough and tumble bunch, but in the end, he taught them a few things about hockey, and well, they taught him a few things about life.
He taught them how to quack.
They were called the Quacker Bunch.
Quack, quack, quack. All right, guys.
Anyway.
Let's actually talk some Tudor. Now that we've done our 8 minutes of unicorn sex and being happy.
I mean, those two things go hand in hand.
Of course.
So what are we learning about today, Emily?
Today, this came from a listener, and she told me I should do this episode, and then I was almost ashamed that I had not done it before because it's so obvious. Let me make sure I have the listener's name right. Michelle. So thank you, Michelle, for this idea. Today we're going to talk about Henry's mistresses.
Yeah, how have we not done this?
I don't know, but then it just kind of like
just in time for Valentine's Day.
Just in time for V-Day.
Oh my God, you're right.
It's going to be good. Like, I'm pretty pumped to talk about this. So when she was giving me this idea, it kind of then led to this whole like domino effect. And I was like, oh my God, we could talk about the mistresses, and then we could do an episode about this, and then we could do an episode about this. So like, I just got the next 2 months worth of episodes scheduled. And
I
it
was
is
talking to my family today, and I told 'cause apparently they didn't know that I do this podcast. And they're like, "So aren't you going to run out of topics eventually?" And I said, "No,
not with Emily. Well, it's just really funny because like this is a super obvious topic and I didn't even think about it. And then I'm sure there are going to be more obvious topics that we didn't even think about.
Right.
So we'll always have those one-offs that are just like a little bit of a stretch, but they're still interesting. So no, we've done pretty good. And then honestly, at some point we're going to reach a time where we can redo episodes.
Revisit some.
Yeah, revisit. They'll be.
After you read some
They'll
new
probably
books,
find
maybe
somebody
do that
buried.
soft reboot."
Yeah.
They'll probably find somebody buried under a car park.
We'll cast Andrew Garfield.
I'd be down for that. So, guys, funny story. Richard III, his body was found under a car park, which is a parking lot in Britain.
What?
His body was found under a car park like 5, 6, 7 years ago. And then just recently, one of Henry VII's beds was found under a car park.
Interesting.
And so, like, if we're ever missing anything, just like go start digging up car parks.
That's where Jimmy Hoffa is.
That's where Jimmy Hoffa is, a car park in England, probably Surrey or Leicester, probably Leicester. So today we are going to talk about Henry's mistresses. Are you ready?
Yes.
So first I want to talk about like the concept of a mistress because it had different ideas back then. So when you think of a mistress now, you're probably thinking of like the jerk rich CEO who's got a trophy wife but is stooping the secretary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not like that back then. There was some secretary stooping, but it was thought of as differently. So I actually hear a lot of historians refer to Henry as actually like a prude.
What?
And it's really weird to think about because they're like, yes, he got married, but like he was all about being in love and he was a prude and he didn't just go shtup everyone. No, that's not true. He was just private about it. Like he didn't like carry his mistresses out on what are those things Roman ladies were carried on, like couches with arms.
Oh, I don't know what they're called, but I know what you're talking about. Where like you get the guys who like are holding it, like lifting
he didn't do that with his
carry
mistresses. He didn't lord them in front of everyone. He was pretty private about it, which is part of why we don't know exactly how everything's happened with the ladies he boned. So mistresses were acceptable back then. And if you think about how marriages were arranged mostly, they were diplomatic. You didn't like they were arranged. It was a political ploy. It was like
everybody was like, "Oh yeah, of course he's gonna fool around on the side."
Well, the fooling around on the side is his like escape for love. Like that's how he found love. Like I think we can all agree love is an important thing to have in anybody's life.
It is kind of weird to think about how mistresses like you're appointed practically.
Well, they were. And
yeah.
It was
especially when you get to see the term, you just assume.
Yeah. Yeah. So mistresses were acceptable back then. So here are some examples of some of the Tudor relations who had mistresses. Henry VIII's grandfather, he loved his wife, but he had an insane amount of mistresses. This was Edward the Fourth. He married his wife for love. She was a commoner, but he was just like so friggin' promiscuous. And then his great-grandfather and his great-uncle, his great-grandfather was Owen Tudor and his great-uncle was Jasper Tudor. They had a couple bastard children. And then even Henry VII had a bastard. So Henry VII and Edward, they loved their wives. Henry VII was definitely arranged, but he did love his wife, but he still had a bastard. And that bastard's name is actually Sir Roland de Belleville.
He's actually the son of his sister who had... Okay, I'm just thinking out of Stark right now.
It's funny, I made a Stark reference later.
Okay.
So like the wife was the duty, right? Like she produced heirs, she was the queen, she had to be very chaste.
She did all the heavy lifting.
She did all the heavy
she
lifting.
Was the public figure.
Yeah, she was the public figure. She definitely got something out of it, but the unfortunate side of this is the kings were allowed to have that loving sexual release, but the queens absolutely could not. And it's because the kings are seen as virile, powerful, masculine men, and the women were chaste, doting, motherly figures. And like, I mean, nobody wants to think of their mom banging, right?
Was was like the public's opinion of it, like they just wanted to assume that the king didn't have mistresses or anything like that? Almost like how people want to believe that wrestling is real, but we all know that it's not.
Yes. That's a perfect actual description for it. Like,
Okay.
like people watch wrestling, they want to think it's real, but we all know it's super fake.
Yeah.
You know?
You play along.
Right. So, Henry VII's or Henry VIII's childhood, we talked a little bit about that before.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually had a tutor that I didn't write the guy's name. It was a tutor.
Oh.
He had a tutor who may have been who may have been part of the reason Henry viewed women the way he did. So he may have taught Henry that women who betrayed their husbands or lovers, they were not to be respected. So if Henry VIII is sleeping with another man's wife, well, even though she's sleeping with him, and even though she couldn't say no, because you can't say no to the king,
Yeah.
she was betraying her husband, and so therefore she was not worthy of respect. It was super fucking, what's it called when you hate women? Misogynistic.
Misogynistic.
Yep.
Super fucking misogynistic. But it was partially, not that this is an excuse. I don't always excuse these things, but it's partially just in that day, that's the way it was. So, not that being a mistress was bad, especially if you're sleeping with the king, you're definitely getting some good stuff out of it. They would usually get presents, including money and land, jewels, clothes, all of the stuff that they couldn't afford. They might be able to buy themselves a nice new gown once a year for Christmas, but Henry VIII would be like, here are 5 bolts of fabric that cost 5 years of your pension. And then if she gave him a bastard son, she automatically got elevated because that son would then get titles, like he might be made an earl or a duke, and Henry would watch out for him. So,
is there like a set of rules of who can be
a mistress?
a mistress? Like you have to be a certain class, or can anyone be one?
Not set. Okay, so here's.
Or is it Pierce the King's going like, I want that one?
It's kind of a mix between the two. So there
That
were
one 'cause
rules.
it runs.
What'd you say?
I said that one because it's a Freakazoid joke.
Well,
One of my favorites.
freak of me, freak of you. That's how he got the ladies into bed. He'd go up to them and say, "Freak of me, freak of you." So the way, I mean, he would mostly pick from his wives' ladies in waitings, which we know,
Yeah.
and it's only because they were.
he's going to be around him all the time. He's going to be like, hey, she's looking all right.
That's what it is. And honestly, to be a lady in waiting, you had to be pretty. That was like you had to be good looking. The queen could not be surrounded by ugly women. So you were typically in the nobility somehow, or your father was a knight. Like you had that courtly connection. A peasant lady wasn't going to be brought in as a lady in waiting, and an average maid was not going to sleep with the king, because he didn't see those maids, but he saw these beautiful women and he interacted with them. So of course he wanted to bang them. So now sleeping with somebody of the lower class. So for example, Anne was actually of the lower class. She was not nobility.
Right,
her
'cause we were
father was
talking
not a
about that.
peer. Her uncle was but like it just the way it was all spread out with the family tree. She was not. She was Lady Anne. Didn't really do much for her. So there was some benefit of sleeping with the lower classes, but it wasn't really. It was almost a risk because. So the benefit of it was that they were not going to try and put their family traditionally in positions of power because they didn't have titles that would get them those positions.
Mm-hmm.
But also, sleeping with the lower classes was just like you didn't really look good. So our cats are flipping out right now. It's so funny. So let's start with do you guys remember the mistresses of Henry VIII, the ones he didn't marry?
I know the one that we always
Bessie
talk
Blount.
about.
Bessie Blount.
Yes.
Okay, do you remember any of the others?
Nope.
Mary Boleyn.
Oh, they really they did?
Yeah. Okay, we're going to talk about her a little bit. Also, today is February 4th is Mary Boleyn's anniversary with her husband. Congrats, Mary.
Aw.
Hope things go well for you.
They didn't go bad. that marriage. So let's talk about one of Henry's first mistresses. So this was when he was the Prince of Wales. So after Arthur died, but before he was king. So there was this woman, Elizabeth Denton, and she was listed as part of Elizabeth of York's household. She was his mother's household. And at first I thought that they were saying she grew up in the nursery with Henry and his sisters. No. She was the royal mistress of the nursery. So basically, Henry VIII had a Tony Stark moment and slept with his nanny. Like, that is the most playboy thing he could ever have done. But it gets worse. His grandmother selected her to sleep with him.
Ooh.
She's like, well, if you're going to pop a cherry, we're going to pick it out for you.
Thanks, Grandma.
Thanks, Grandma. You're so sweet.
For your birthday, I got you a hoe.
So
I
he
got
was
you
sleeping
a-
with a nanny?
He was sleeping basically with the nanny. She was the mistress of the nursery. So
What was the age difference there?
I'm not sure, but like she oversaw the upbringing of his two sisters. One was older, one was younger.
Mm-hmm.
So, and she could have been doing that when she was like 20. So she
Yeah.
could have only been like 15 years older than him, but still like, ugh.
Today it's
Ugh.
weird. Back then, not as weird.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Especially
then,
when you're king. Or
Right.
future king.
right. So then he became the king and he married Catherine. So he would mostly, when your wife was pregnant, you couldn't have sex. They thought it harmed the baby. And so you just didn't have sex when your wife
I
was
thought you meant in general. You can't.
No. She can't. He can't have sex with her. He can.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually when he had his mistresses was when his wife would be pregnant. And Catherine of Aragon was pregnant pretty fucking frequently, if you remember. So she lost almost all of her children, but she was still pregnant pretty regularly. Every year and a half, she was pregnant. So he married Catherine of Aragon, and then she quickly became pregnant. Like, they had a honeymoon baby. And so he started sleeping with Anne Hastings. So the awkwardness of this is there's this family, the Stafford family. And the Duke of Buckingham is kind of a giant shit. He hated Henry. He thought he was an upstart. He didn't like how Henry put non-nobles in, like Charles Brandon was coming into power, and he didn't like that. He's like, I have old royal blood. I should be getting this stuff. So he hated Henry. And then Henry starts stripping his sister. So Henry didn't like Buckingham because here's something that might have been confusing in past episodes. If you are the Duke of Buckingham, but your name was Henry Stafford, you are either referred to as Stafford or your dukedom named Buckingham. I've been trying to keep it consistent. So if I switch between the two, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But they are the powerful Stafford family, and Buckingham had been kind of like marrying other higher nobles and consolidating power, and he was really a threat to Henry, and so they hated each other. So then Henry starts banging his sisters. So her name is Anne, and she had another sister, Elizabeth. So Anne goes up to Elizabeth, and she goes, I am having the best sex of my life right now. I am having a big ol'
She says, "Tell me more. Tell me more."
I'm having a big old love affair with William Compton. William Compton was one of Henry's gentlemen,
Pseudonyms.
one of his gentlemen of the chamber.
Whoops.
What'd you say?
I said pseudonyms.
Yes. No. So she was already having an affair with William Compton, and then Henry VIII was like, well, I want some of that. So it's possible that they were both banging her at the same time, but I think she stopped having an affair with William Compton when
You
she's
mean like an Eiffel Tower?
Ew, Garrett, take that back.
I take it back.
Thank you. It's possible she started having an affair with Henry right after William Compton, just like tradesies. Well, Buckingham was told because after Anne told Elizabeth, Elizabeth then went and told both her brother and Anne's husband. So Anne's husband was like, you're a big old hoe, and he sent her to the country. And Henry was pissed, and Buckingham was pissed. Buckingham first insulted William Compton because he was allowed to do that because he wasn't the king. And then Henry went up to Buckingham, and he's like, why are you yelling at my buddies? And Buckingham was like, because your buddy's a hoe. And then Buckingham got sent away. So, there's this big old blow up for it. And then Henry, still pissed off about losing his mistress, went to Catherine. This is like the first 2 years of their marriage. Anne and Elizabeth had been Catherine's ladies in waiting. And so she lost both of them because Henry was like, I want Elizabeth out. And so Catherine was pissed, and it was their first big fight. And then Catherine had to kind of learn to look the other way for those affairs. So that was his first mistress, and those were the blow-ups that were caused by that. But he definitely didn't stop banging ladies just because Catherine was sad that he was doing other ladies. During that French campaign where Catherine was left as regent, he had a mistress that's referred to as his Flemish mistress. Also, okay, so they're called Flemish if they're from Flanders, but I really don't understand that. Like the F and L.
I thought you just need to take a Mucinex.
She needs some. She's from Mucinex.
But she's
it's
also
a
from
tiny little
Flanders?
country in Europe. She's Flemish from the country Mucinex. It's right next to Italy.
But no, then you said where's it actually from?
Flanders.
So she's all like high to diddly with the king?
Yes. Her name is Étionnette de la Baume, and I'm pretty.
Oh, that's a new name.
I'm actually I'm pretty sure Étionnette means Stephanie. Because I know Etienne is Stephen in French, so.
You said de la Bone?
De la Baume, Baume.
I think you said bone. I
They're
was gonna-
not that spot on.
Oh, that would have been so fantastic.
So poor Etiennette, she was actually in her mid-teens and married to a 60-year-old man. And she came from a royal family, and they just had a quick fling. And then he had an affair with a woman named Jane Popincourt, and she was also referenced in documents about being in Eltham, the palace where Henry and his sisters grew up, as part of Elizabeth's house. But I'm not sure if she grew up in Eltham, because she's usually courtiers' kids would also get educated with Henry or with like the royal children, just because it's so much easier. But she also may have been in charge of something there. But she is, for people who are into the Tudors, her name is familiar as one of his mistresses, even though it was a very short affair. She was actually the mistress of the Duc de Longueville, who was a hostage of the French, or from France, of the English. So they were actually together for a long, long time, but then for like a short little bit, she was also banging Henry. Then we get into the famous Bessie Blount. They started banging around 1513. And the difference with Bessie Blount is she was unmarried.
So it was all good. No problems there, right?
Except, yes, actually it's bad. Henry, this was the last time he ever slept with an unmarried woman. And she was one of Catherine's ladies in waiting, and he straight up fell in love with her, and they were together for like 5 years. So they were together around 1513, and then in 1519-ish, she gave birth to Henry Fitzroy. Well, she was unmarried, so Henry kind of had to claim Henry as his own child. I got cat hair in my mouth. Well, so he had to claim Henry as his bastard. He quickly married her off to a man named Gilbert Taleboys, which, yeah, that's his real name. Those English are weird. But because Henry Fitzroy was born before that, Henry was like, okay, fine, he's my son. Of course, Catherine was unhappy with the situation because Henry was given titles that should have been reserved for her kids, and titles that meant a lot to being named as a potential heir.
Yeah.
And so Wolsey was like, all right, I'll fix this. Fuck you, Catherine. And then he got rid of the rest of her Spanish ladies that had been with her since she came to England. Wolsey sucks. Poor Catherine. It's so sad. So that was last time Henry slept with a unmarried woman, because he knew bastards could have been threats to potential real children.
Right.
And it was 1519 and 1518 was the last time.
You know what? Smart thing.
Yeah. Well,
just that ain't my kid.
yeah.
It's that dude's.
Well, 1518 was the last time Catherine of Aragon got pregnant. She could have. They still weren't 100% sure she couldn't ever get pregnant again, but Henry didn't want to risk it again, and all that jazz. So then comes Mary Boleyn. She married William Carey in February of 1520. Happy anniversary, Mary. Fun fact, William Carey was a direct descendant of Edward III. Before she was in England, she was in France for a little bit, and she may or may not have been the mistress of Francis I. I'm getting some conflicting theories on that. One, the book I've been reading, it's called The Other Tudors by Philippa Jones. She insists that Mary would not have been the mistress of Francis because then Henry wouldn't have actually slept with her because he hated Francis so much. Part of me is like, well, maybe he would have slept with her because he was like, I hate Francis and I got to make sure I outdo him, so I'm going to show him that I can also sleep with the exact same woman. But either way, she came back to England and Henry wanted to bang her, but he didn't want to risk the unmarried part again. So he found her a husband. Wolsey and Henry hand-selected William Carey to marry her so that she could then sleep with Henry. And
did she know why they were marrying her off? Or
yeah, she knew. She wasn't like a pawn. She wasn't completely a pawn.
Okay, did he know?
Yes, he knew. And
okay,
if you were the wife of, or if you were the husband of a mistress, you got some perks from it. I mean, you got lands, titles, money, all this kind of stuff. He got, actually, William Carey. So Mary was his mistress for like 5 years. And every single one of those years, except for one, he got some sort of title or land. So he profited.
So was there like a bunch of guys just like trying to get Henry to sleep with their wives?
Or their nieces and nephews, or their nieces and sisters, like our shitty douche of Norfolk from
Damn, it's like
last
royal
week.
pimps.
They are royal pimps. They
Pretty much.
suck. So in 1520, she actually became the acknowledged mistress of Henry. Everybody understood that she was his mistress. And he loved her so much that he named a ship after her called the Mary Boleyn. Not too subtle.
I wonder who that's named after. I have no idea.
So here's the thing. In 1525, she was pregnant with her first of 2 children. She had 2 children, Catherine and Henry. And because she was married to William Carey, they had his last name and they were recognized as his, but they could have been Henry's. One or both of them. And there's a lot of debate that still happens about the Careys.
Is the only idea behind that Henry was, banging her
Yes.
on the side, or like
Yes.
did
And
they share any features with Henry or anything like that?
I think there's I think people thought Catherine Carey looked like Henry, and we're not sure which of the 2 was born first. But Catherine Carey ended up marrying Sir Francis Knollys, and they had that daughter Lettice Knollys, who looked just like Elizabeth. So it is possible. Now, it's hard for us to say now because it's really hard to identify portraits anymore. But Catherine Carey was very well loved by Elizabeth. So, she could have loved them as cousins, or she could have loved them as half-siblings.
Yeah.
Right.
So, lots of debate about whether or not they are or are not her children. So, you know what I think needs to happen? We have a listener who is related to Catherine Carey. I think you need mitochondrial DNA, which is ladies' DNA, to confirm relation. If we get mitochondrial DNA from her, and then mitochondrial DNA from, I think the current queen would work, then we might be able to trace them back to a relation between the Tudor siblings.
So send us your DNA today.
Yes, please send us your DNA. A hair.
Swab your mouth with a Q-tip and send it to us.
Yeah, we're
This is directed to the queen.
I don't understand why it hasn't been done yet, but whatever.
I'm sure the queen is listening to us right now.
Oh my God! Could you imagine? She's just surrounded by all of her corgis.
She's just giggling.
She's just got her earbuds in.
She
and
thinks it's
she's
hilarious.
laughing her ass off.
These Americans.
We're gonna be at the royal wedding.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, have fun with those weddings. You're going to
We're
2
gonna do a
this
live
year.
podcast from the royal wedding.
Oh my God, can we do it?
Oh, man.
I mean, I know we won't actually be there, but can we all wake up at 4 a.m. and do a live wedding?
Hell no! I don't wake up before
Why don't you
before
stay
9 for
awake?
anybody.
Stay
Stay awake
awake until
until
4 in the
4 a.m.
morning.
Oh my god.
All right, listeners,
Old man
vote.
now,
Do you want us to do a live episode of the royal wedding?
Please vote no, or you're gonna have the most tired sounding Jeff on this podcast ever.
No, Jeff drinks tea now.
Emily, you can get up and do it.
It's boring.
Broadcast on like Twitch or something.
That's boring without you guys. You're the funny ones.
You're very funny too.
I
Emily.
am not funny. Stop being so
I think-
condescending.
Emily, you are very funny.
Thank you. Okay, but listeners, do you want an episode? Tell us. Speaking of our listeners, Jeff, you know when you and I were trying to think of what Taylor Swift's minions were called last week?
Yes.
They're her squad. So thank you to our listener for that one. So anyway,
Have we done an episode on royal weddings?
no, we did one on at weddings.
We do like marriages and whatnot.
Yeah,
Okay.
what they looked like and whatnot. But I think we should add
Alright.
one. So those were all the relationships Henry had before Anne Boleyn.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah, I know. And then there was the after Anne
Well,
Boleyn.
there was like 30
20 some odd years of
20
marriage.
Yeah, 20 years right there with
Yeah.
Catherine alone. So
And
makes sense.
he did a lot while he was with Anne too. So first there was Jane Pollard, and she had a son named Thomas Stukely. Now he was probably Henry's bastard.
Mhm.
Very likely Henry's bastard.
Were any of these kids aware that they were Henry's bastards?
Yes,
or were
because
some and then some
yeah,
not.
yeah. And they probably used it.
Like I can't remember. Did Henry Fitzroy know?
Oh, his last name literally meant son of the king.
Oh.
Yes.
It's kind of like
Well,
When
that's
he was
good.
named the Duke of Richmond.
it's kind
he
of like
knew.
it's kind of like when in Game of Thrones when their names like the
Yeah,
bastard
Jon
sons'
Snow.
names meant
Snow.
their birth.
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool.
So Jane Pollard was his mistress, and she gave him a son, Thomas Stukely, and he was notorious. He fucked up a lot. He should have been executed for shit. Even now, I'm saying he should have been executed for this shit. Like, sane ruler execution. Like, for example, when Edward VI was on the throne, he made up this whole plot about Henry II coming to invade England. It was bullshit. Didn't actually happen. And that was just one instance of a fuck up of his. So that's actually part of why everybody thinks he was a bastard, is because like Edward VI wasn't going to behead his brother, right?
Right.
So then there was Mary Berkeley was her married name. Mary Perrott was her unmarried name, but she was married. All of these women were married besides Anne Boleyn. Well, I guess not so much. So Mary was married. And she was another lady in waiting of, I believe, Catherine's. And she gave him a son named John. And John was well liked by all of his potential Tudor siblings.
Mm-hmm.
Mary I, Edward VI, and Elizabeth I. So things were going fine for them. Obviously, there was Anne Boleyn. So they never really slept together. But she was still a mistress because he was basically living with her. And then there was a woman named Jane Dingley. What an unfortunate name.
These some really like variety of names I've been hearing in this.
Joan.
podcast.
Oh, wait, I'm a liar. Her name is Joan Dingley.
Doesn't that still change the?
So they had a daughter. He was sleeping with her from either in the late 1520s or the late 1520s or early 1530s. And Jeff, I have a new name for a daughter. Aetheldrada.
What?
Is she made of clay?
Aetheldrada. Aetheldrada. Aethadradal Molt, or Multi was her name. What a friggin' unfortunate name. I thought it was like maybe Welsh.
That sounds like the long forgotten name of a witch.
It sounds very Anglican, like very old school Anglican, like King John the First, or maybe even William the Conqueror. So what happened with that was Henry had a tailor, something Multi, and the tailor was like, yeah, she's totally my illegitimate daughter. And Henry was like, good job. Here's some land and properties. So Aetheldrada was one of Elizabeth's ladies in waiting, and she escorted when Elizabeth was put in the tower by Mary. She was with her, and then on her coronation, on Elizabeth's coronation, Etheldrada was there. So another one of those like half sibling things. And then there was Madge Shelton. Madge Shelton was actually Anne's cousin, and Anne's family probably arranged for her to be his mistress.
God, he liked those Boleyns.
The thinking was probably that, like, if he's going to have an affair, we should make sure it's with somebody who can't get powerful. Like Jane Seymour, which was evidence that she was going to get fucked up. So the Madge Shelton thing didn't last too long, and then he went to Jane Seymour, and Anne was beheaded. So that was why Madge would have been chosen, because they weren't going to let Madge try and become queen. So then there were the Jane Seymour years, and those were short. Don't know about any mistresses in that time, because she wasn't pregnant except for the last 10 months of their marriage, 9 months of their marriage. And then the Anne of Cleves years happened. And obviously he didn't give a shit about Anne of Cleves, so he was just going to bone whatever to get laid. And in around 1538 or 39, he started sleeping with a woman named Anne Bassett. Interesting story. Her stepfather was an illegitimate son of Edward IV. So it was Henry's uncle. Everybody's related.
Woo!
And actually for a little while during the Anne of Cleves ending thing, there were rumors that he would marry her. He didn't, and she ended up becoming a maid of honor to Queen Mary I.
Okay.
And then, of course, there was Catherine Howard, who was the delightful lady who did not fuck up at all. And then he obviously married Catherine Parr, and then she was never a mistress, but Catherine Willoughby, who had been Charles Brandon's final wife.
Yeah.
He was interested in her, and there were rumors he was going to try and divorce Catherine Parr so he could marry her. She was never a mistress, though, and so that's good. It was just like a potential final love. So.
Then he died.
Then he croaked.
Then he croaked.
Then bad.
So how many illegitimate kids did he have that we know of?
Henry Fitzroy is the only acknowledged one, so he's the only one we can say 100% was his.
Okay.
After that,
The
there's
others
like
were
all sorts of
probably his. There are some that are rumored, but are not very likely to be
Is
his.
there anything we learned from Henry is that he could get people pregnant.
That's kind of where there's that rumor that he's got that disease.
Where it's like once you've done it once, it's never
You
good
can
again.
have, well, yeah, the disease, I can't remember what it's called. I'll look it up in just a hot second. But it's, he's supposed to be able to get women pregnant with a first child, but then they would miscarry second children.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what
Yeah,
it's
because he was like 3 for 3 with the wives of at least getting one child out of them.
Yeah, although,
wives.
although Queen Catherine of Aragon miscarried there first.
But
There
I mean,
are rumors that
but
she was
they were all able to get-
anorexic,
Yeah.
which is why she miscarried a lot. So it could have been a combination. I mean, you and I know disease. All right, let me look.
Good for you.
Let me look this up.
So-
disease, Henry VIII, infertility.
So did he have more mistresses or about the average as other kings?
I'd say it's probably about average, honestly.
Okay.
What about the queens? Was that a thing
No,
with them
they
at all?
can't have. They can't.
They
They
don't
cannot.
have it.
That's why Anne was beheaded. That's
Yeah.
why Catherine was beheaded. You do not
Well,
have affairs.
I mean, like Mary or Elizabeth. Could they have had it?
No,
Okay.
because the queenly thing is still it's
they're- I mean,
really
like-
confusing.
Well, it's like
because
the rule. It's like you're talking about before. Like if they do get pregnant, they can't have sex. That kind of stuff.
Well-
anyways.
Well, there were rumors about Elizabeth and that one dude, right?
Yeah, Robert Dudley.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
problem with that is like a queen is supposed to be above all that. She's appointed by God. So it's almost like it's weird to think about priests having kids because like they're supposed to be above all of that like fleshly
Yes.
desire. And the queens were supposed to be queens especially. They were supposed to be chaste and like representative of like the Virgin Mary. So
Really leaning into the double standard.
it's crap. And
Yeah, it's
so-
like
Yeah.
you as a queen cannot
Here's-
have this, but
here's
the
an-
kings get laid as much as you can.
Right. So here's an interesting conundrum. Or an interesting, not a conundrum, historical thing. In the Edwardian era, early 1900s, and maybe even a little bit before that, a woman's duty was really to provide an heir to her husband. So as soon as she gave birth to a boy, so we can also say like from maybe even the 1700s on, she had to give her husband an heir. As soon as she gave an heir, it was usually socially acceptable for her to have very discreet affairs. And the husband would also have very discreet affairs.
Everyone's like, yeah, you did it. You can fuck all you want.
Pretty much.
You did your job. You're done.
There's this woman, Georgiana Devonshire, and she was the wife of a duke. And she's well known because she was a huge she was a very good friend of Marie Antoinette, except she lived in England. And she was a fashion maven. And also she was very involved in politics. She was incredibly influential. But she's also known for her private life. Her best friend was sleeping with her husband, and she lived with them. And so she was like, well, you're sleeping with my best friend. I gave you a son. I'm going to go sleep with the man I love. And the husband was like, no, fuck you. You stay here. You're my wife. You need to represent me. You need to be chaste. And she goes, but you're banging her. And he goes, I don't care. I do what I want. So it wasn't always true, but it was sometimes acceptable once you gave an heir a son. It was not applicable during the Tudor times, though, at all.
Would have there ever been any, like, I mean, this is probably tough to know, but like any cases of like king or nobility or whatever, what have you, can't get his wife pregnant, so he's like, hey, dude, knock my wife up, please.
Actually, that's why that whole trend of watching women give birth became a thing. So there was a rumor that Elizabeth was not Henry's child, although he acknowledged her even after he said, "and cheated on me." That was just dirty political play later on, so that you could discredit Elizabeth when she was on the throne. But courtiers started watching the queen give birth, and it was because they were afraid that she would give birth to a daughter or a dead child, and so they would smuggle in a different kid.
Oh.
And then Edward the Fourth, so he had a couple of brothers. He had three brothers. There was Richard the Third, George, who was drowned in the wine, and then he had another brother, Edmund, and their mother was Cecily. And there was a rumor that Cecily had slept with like an archer in her husband's army, and that was the father of Edward the Fourth. So those kind of things did happen, but like a king would never have said somebody else impregnate my wife, because fertility was a woman's problem. They would never have suggested that the king was impotent. So when Anne Boleyn she did say this, and I think she said it to her sister-in-law Jane, the king has never the skill nor the virility to pleasure a woman. That was basically saying he's impotent, and that's a big no-no. Big no-no for anybody, but especially big no-no for Henry.
God, that'd be crazy to find out though. Like one of the kings or somebody was like,
well,
his father was just like some random schmuck, and like the whole bloodline is just off.
Oh yeah. So
that's like some Da Vinci Code shit.
It really is. It's so crazy to think that there's probably some secret shit like that going on in the world.
Yeah.
So here's a funny story. So
this is just me. I just keep thinking of Game of Thrones stuff. It's like finding out who Jon really is, kind of thing.
He hasn't watched that season yet.
Oh no, I come on, dude, I know.
Okay.
You can't escape that shit from the internet.
So,
also, sorry to any listeners who escaped it and found out.
So I have a funny thing for you. So Eleanor of Aquitaine, she is a badass queen of England.
She also founded Aquafina.
So she was married to Louis VII of France. They married in 1137, and she did not get pregnant with I can't remember if it's sons or children at all. So Louis divorced her. They annulled their marriage because he's like, you're useless. You're not getting me what I want. And then she went and married the King of England, Henry, and she gave him a shit ton of kids. So I love that story. If you guys don't know about Eleanor of Aquitaine, look her up, read a book, whatever. She's so good.
All right.
Anyway.
Is that it?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, that was actually really fascinating to hear.
Glad you liked it. Thank you, Michelle, for the recommendation.
Yeah, I love hearing about that saucy, seedy underbelly
I know, isn't it?
About what people don't think of.
I love hearing the what ifs. Like, there are genetically, it's very likely that certain things did happen. So genetically, Henry VII was very likely related to Edward IV because he looked just like him. Elizabeth was probably 100% Henry's daughter. So there are things like that that are very likely to be true, but there's always that moment
Mm-hmm.
where like,
Right.
are you really who you say you are? I just love that sneaky side of history.
Yeah.
So cool.
Sneaky history. That's our spin-off podcast.
Ooh, I like that. That'd be fun.
That'd be
like
really
a whole
fun, yeah.
that'd be a whole podcast about conspiracy theories of history.
That'd be a fun thing to do. Like maybe once a month, we have like a special episode of Sneaky History.
I still want to do special episodes. We have to just figure out how to work those in.
Sneaky History. That's the
Just gotta
intro.
sneak
There's no
'em in.
music. It's just me whispering, Sneaky History.
I like that. I think we should do it.
All right.
I'm serious. I think we should do a spin-off episode like once a month called Sneaky History.
Okay. Everyone, if you like this idea, hashtag Sneaky History.
It couldn't even have to be like a normal episode or a line. Like it doesn't have to be like episode 56.
It can be like a secondary.
Be like special.
Okay.
Extra,
and
bonus.
We'll talk about obviously more than Tudors. We can talk about other sneaky history shit.
Oh yeah.
I am so down for that. I kind of now just want to do it regardless.
We'll see what the reaction if anybody didn't tune out before that. See, that's why you guys gotta listen to the whole thing because we talk about interesting shit at the end too.
I know.
Ideas.
We're so cool, guys. I love our listeners though. You guys are all awesome.
Yeah.
It's super cool to chat with you and have fun.
We got a huge influx in the
Yes.
past month, so
Yeah.
thank you
I'm
and welcome
amazed.
to all the new people.
Facebook keeps
Unless you started with the first episode and then you're like, oh, this is crap.
I'm digging how Facebook is like encouraging me because every time I get on it, it's like, you're almost at 500 likes. And I'm like, oh shit, I guess we are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's pretty baller, guys. We love all of you. And in that vein, find us on Twitter at Tudor Know Her. It's where I share facts about what's happened in Tudor history. And we also goof around and I share funny tweets from other history people. So I think you should
Interact with us.
find us there. Send
as
us.
We saw like with this episode.
Tell
this-
us why we're wrong.
Like today was a listener recommendation episode.
Yes,
So if you
we
ever
take
if you have
those
an idea,
guys.
we'll take.
Those. And then on Facebook at Tudor I Hardly Know Her, I also share history facts, and there's a lot of chit chat and engagement on that as well. And as always, rate and review us on iTunes. Tell us why we're awesome. You can also tell us why we suck, but in all honesty, we're probably not going to change the way we do it because we like doing this, and this is for us as well. So if you just want to give other people heads up and tell us that we suck, tell them that we suck, that's cool. But also tell us if you really like us. That helps other people who you think would like us find us.
And it boosts my ego, which I need like a mother.
Garrett needs a mother, guys.
Also, thanks everyone for the birthday wishes.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
sweet.
And
Yeah.
weekly reminder, Garrett is single and you should date him. He's a catch, ladies.
Just wait until like someone listens to
Alright.
the episode like months later, and it's like after he's already got a girlfriend.
He's got a super serious girlfriend. He's like ready to propose.
You can be my mistress on the side, like we'll do some Henry VIII role play.
Be my Bessie
minus the axes.
Please don't give me a bastard.
Minus the axes. So
Yeah.
anyway,
I swear to God, I won't kill you. That sounds like the words of somebody who's gonna kill somebody.
that reminded me of something. I just can't remember. I feel like I was just on Facebook, and there was a Cracked headline. And somebody on Cracked, there's an article about, sorry, one of our listeners just suggested I do a whole episode about the book The Other Boleyn Girl and about the accuracy of that. So like now that's also going to be on our list.
I can't believe you haven't done that yet.
I want to. I feel like I just rewatched the movie, so I'm down to do it with the book.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to
need
reread
watch
it.
that, yeah.
There was a Cracked thing, and it was like 20 things you won't believe people did. And one was, I worked with a person who was in medical school, and they would bring home body parts. And one time there was a human brain in the fridge, and I'm like, I think they were a serial killer, and you need to move out.
Mm-hmm.
Garrett,
I saw that post
Garrett. Okay, this is totally away from Tudor. This is true crime. Sorry for all our listeners who are not into this, because right after this story, we're going to say divorce, beheaded, died, divorce, beheaded, survived, goodbye. So you can go right now. But if you're interested in true crime, Garrett, do you remember when we were at the My Favorite Murder Live here in Indy?
Yes.
And they covered Herb Baumeister, the guy who killed people in the pool in his basement?
Yes.
Our friend's mother was interviewed by him for a job.
Oh.
I know. I was like freaking out. And then our other friend was like, you've got like a fangirl for the serial killer. Because you know how he had opened that. So for our fans who don't know, listeners who don't know, Herb Baumeister was a serial killer from Westfield, Indiana, right near our house, and he had this big old house in this area, and he was rich, and he had kids about my husband's age, and he would go to gay clubs, lure men home into his indoor pool, and then drug them and then kill them and bury their bodies in the backyard. And his kids' friends were reported to actually find the bones in the yard. And like the kids would be like, I found dog bones. And the guy was like, yes, those are dog bones. And then extra creepy facts, he had a basement full of mannequins. Don't know why, just mannequins. And he had hidden rooms. Super fucking creepy. So this guy,
I have a friend whose house is nearby where the house is.
Lucas, right?
No, John.
Anyway,
that reminds me, I've been watching Mindhunter.
Oh, we need to watch it. I think Jeff would really like it just because it's oh my god, what's his name?
David
Fincher. I almost said David Starkey. That's a historian. Mindhunter's good.
Yeah, so far so good.
Okay, so that's it. And I promised afterwards that we would say divorce, beheaded, died. Divorce, beheaded, survived.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Sneaky history. Just try it. Just try whispering it.